Tying up a nice little wet fly from Ray Bergman's book Trout today. This is called the Artful Dodger. Now I have to confess at the beginning of this, I'm probably committing some sort of internet fly tying transgression here because I'm actually publishing a video where the fly isn't perfect. You probably might have noticed as this was turning in the introduction, the wing ended up being way off on this side. Now, if you watch the video to the end where I tie the wing in, you'll see initially it wasn't, and it wasn't until after I had done the whip finish and everything, I looked at it and I noticed it's more on my side of the hook than it is on the very center. I tried to scooch that with my thumb and fingernails a little bit onto those threads, and I made it worse. But I decided I'm leaving that in there because sometimes that's just how it happens. Sometimes the flies, they come together really smooth and sometimes they just don't. Now you could cut that off, possibly even just unwrap the head and cut the wing out and put it in a new wing, or cut the whole thing off and tie another fly. They're pretty quick and easy. That's the Artful Dodger, and I'll get started tying. So I'm going to start the Artful Dodger with my hook in the vise. This is a Mustad 3399 in a size 6. I'll debarb the hook. The Artful Dodger has a floss body of Claret, so I'm going to start with a Danville 70 denier in white so that I don't darken up that floss. Attach my thread about an eye length behind the eye of the hook. Advance my thread down to just a little bit past the point of the hook, not quite the very end of the shank. There is not a tail on the Artful Dodger, but there is a tip of gold tinsel as well as a rib of gold tinsel. I'll be using this is a size 16 and 18 Danville silver and gold mylar tinsel. Because there is no tail on this, I can attach the tinsel right here for the tip and then apply the floss body and do the tip and the rib all at the same time. So here I'm just touching turns, advancing down the hook shank to past the barb, maybe about 7 wraps there, back up to where I tied that in. That gives me, just when I apply it, just a little bit of a room right there for the tip. The floss body is a Claret. This is a 4-strand Rayon in Claret. I'm going to use all 4 strands for this size hook. I'm going to attach those in, drawing this down to the left to get that the length of the body, and then in touching turns I'll advance my thread forward, a little wax on my thread to help grip that. Then I will collect all that down to the hook shank as an underbody, keeping that nice and smooth. Once I'm at the end of the body, I will now apply the floss for the body and then the tinsel for the tip and the rib. You may have noticed that while I was applying that floss, I got a few little stray fibers here. It has to do with rough hands. This time of year, low humidity, hands get real rough, and they will fray those very fine rayon fibers very easily. Put 5 evenly spaced wraps of that tinsel in for the rib. Oops, lost control of my thread there. Now I'll have to redo that. I've mentioned before in other videos that this Mylar has definitely has a memory of its own, and as you can see right there, there's the memory. Just lost control of my thread as I was binding that in, and it all came unraveled pretty much all the way back to the very back. That happens. Now, since you already saw me wrap that in very nicely beforehand, I just kind of fast forwarded to me getting this wrapped in and secured in, so you didn't have to see the whole thing twice. I'm going to trim away the excess tinsel, advance my thread forward to behind the eye of the hook. Any of these stray rayon fibers, you could take some tweezers and pluck those out too. So I'm going to attach my finishing thread. I'm going to use a Danville 70 denier in black. I've already got some wax on the thread. I'm going to secure the white thread and the tag of the black and advance this down to the back of the head space, and that's where I'm going to tie in the throat. Now, the throat on the Artful Dodger calls for a light claret. I do not have a light claret, so I'm just using some regular claret Schlappen that I have. I've already got a couple of slips together. Place that underneath with the tips about as far back as, no farther than the barb of the hook. I usually go between the point and the barb, somewhere in there. A little pinch and loop underneath there to bind that in. Trim away the excess. The wing on the Artful Dodger is just some mottled turkey. A little bit of wax on my thread here. I'm back at the end of the head space to tie in the wing. So I've got some mottled turkey here, some darker brown mottled turkey. I've got my right and left slips already cut out. I'll take the right one off and then place the left one on top, matching up those tips. Peel that off the feather. Now I have my 2 slips together. Again, I want to make certain that the tips are even first. And then once the tips are even, I'll check my width. And as you can see, the one on the left side, which is my side, is a little bit wider. I generally like these to be anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 the gap of the hook. I'll peel out 2 of those barbs to give me a more even wing. I think I still have, I've got 1 extra in there. No, I think it's all right. I'm going to tie this in. If I had a tail on here, the tips would be about halfway down the tail. As is, the lower portion of the slope right here is generally going to be right to the rear of the bend of the hook. Now that slid a little bit over to the side. You can see right here. So I'm going to try and wrap that in again. It also, the thread came down a little further forward than I care for. It's just a matter of really when you're tying this in, you're pinching both sides of the hook and those slips so that it just all compresses right down on top of the hook shank, like that. If they scoot over on the side of the hook shank a little bit, as long as it's not fully covering up the body. See, now on this time, it's just a little bit on my side, but I'm going to go with that anyway. It has the shape and the length that I'm looking for. Again, as long as the wing is not covering up the body on the sides, you're good. Bringing my thread down to the eye of the hook, I'll work my way backwards, shaping the head and binding in any butt ends of that wing, that turkey. I'm going to flatten the thread. I'll put in a whip finish here, and then I'll apply some Fly-Tite head cement, which is a thin alcohol-based cement. Fly-Tite will soak down into those thread wraps and secure everything very well. And then I'll come back later and I'll put 2 coats of a clear lacquer on this, as well as a top coat of a black lacquer. Didn't quite cut all of my thread there. So there's the Fly-Tite on there, and like I said, I'll come back and I'll put a couple coats of a clear lacquer and then a top coat of black lacquer, and the Artful Dodger will be complete. That wing is just a little bit crooked. I didn't notice that before. Sometimes you can still scooch these things around with your fingernails just a little bit in there. Now I've scooched it too far. Yeah, now it's way on the other side. Yeah, it's just that you can see it's just off just a little bit to one side there. So I imagine that could still fish okay. I don't know. Sometimes if you get these wings off just a little bit like that, they'll cause the fly to spin in the water. But I'm going to leave that in there for the video because that's how it happens sometimes. And if needed, I can cut all that off and tie another one. That's the Artful Dodger. Thanks for watching today. Thank you for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned a new pattern, at least a tip or trick here and there. If you'd like to help Dress Irons, you can like, comment, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things for the video. You can also head out to dressedirons.com where you can buy flies, tools, stickers, and merch, or you can join a growing community over on Locals at the Dressed Irons Fly Tying Guild. You can also donate to Dressed Irons if you want through the link at the bottom of the description. I thank everybody for their ongoing support, as it really does help the creation of these videos. But what's important is to remember, only fly tying. If you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong.